Simon, we're going to do this right now, and it involves someone you know. I think I've met this gentleman in the past when I've been over in Italy. He's the former AC Milan Director General, Adriano Galliani, who wants a European Super League, yes, to be created. And you said it's never really gone away, Simon.
I did.
The very concept of that, and you were right. But he wants it to be created without English clubs involved. Galliani, friend of the likes of Silvio Berlusconi, he's now the general director at newly promoted Serie A club Monza, feels that a Super League is still a possibility, but should not include clubs from England, as he believes there's already too much money in the Premier League. And he says, look, Premier League clubs earn about 4 times more than Serie A's clubs. Monza get about 33 million from TV rights. He says, look at England, a newly promoted team in England gets about 160 million euros. How can we compete with the likes of Nottingham Forest? Does Signor Galliani have a point?
Well, first of all, he's wrong, because they don't get 135 million, they get about 110, and it weights up towards the top of the division. So the team that wins the league will get about 160 million, the team that gets relegated will get about 110, so he's wrong. Second of all, it's ridiculous to suggest that a Super League involving European teams wouldn't include British teams, or English teams in this instance, because if you look at the makeup of the last European Super League, we wanted 6 of our teams to come into it, when most countries were only proffering 2, because that tends to be the makeup of their particular value in the teams that they've got in their countries. You look at their inabilities to sell. First of all, the distribution mechanism in Serie A is weighted towards the bigger clubs. That's down to them. That's how they distribute their money. Second of all, they've just had a reduction in their TV rights. Their last deal was at 973 million. They thought they were going to get a pay rise, and they got a pay decrease. So that tells you what the broadcasters think of Italian football. You know, very much like the Italian tanks in the Second World War in reverse gear. But the bottom line is that we're in a situation where it's ludicrous. It's ridiculous. He's talking at the top of his head. The fact is that Italian football doesn't get sold. Why doesn't it get sold? Because it's substandard in comparison to other leagues in the world. If you've got a product that once upon a time, we had it in the early 90s when Gascoigne went over to Italy, it was deemed to be the league to go to. When you go back to the 60s, and Jimmy Greaves and John Giles and all these players went to play for Italian clubs rather than play for English clubs, and Ian Rush went there as well. Well, that time, that ship has sailed. You're now in a situation where the powerhouse of world football is English football, and it's being sold domestically at a rate that's double the rate that the Italians are getting domestically. And first of all, there's nothing stopping the Italian domestic broadcasters paying the same money as the domestic broadcasters pay in England. There's 5 billion every 3 years being paid for by Sky and BT for domestic rights. There's currently 2.5 billion being paid for Italian rights. Whose fault's that then?
Yes.
Their fault.
Yeah.
Right? Look at the
Would a European Super League work without English clubs?
Well, it wouldn't be a Super League, would it?
No.
It would be an ancillary league full of teams that are substandard by comparison. Yes, if Real Madrid wanted them, the big side wouldn't want to go in.
He's saying individually they cannot compete with the Premier League. That's what he's saying.
But then, first and foremost, look at your distribution model, because there's no reason why, if you're getting 850 million, right, if you're getting half what the Premier League's getting, and you're getting overseas deals that should be significant as well, why you should be getting a quarter of what the Premier League clubs are getting. Look at your distribution model. Look at maybe the reasons why AC Milan and Inter Milan and the bigger clubs are getting more by definition. Have a look at your model and see if that's fair and representative of it all. Every time we hear about the European Football League, guess where it starts? It starts in Italy. It starts with the Agnelli, who started who was head of the ECA, that wanted to deal with the increase of the Champions League. Everything comes from Italy because, for whatever reason, their football is a financial pup by comparison. So you cannot ever suggest that a European Super League would be a Super League without... And we don't win the European competitions. The Real Madrids of the world, we compete in them. We're in the finals most of the time, or in and around it. And certainly over the last couple of years, we've been dominating the finals with Man City and Chelsea and other sides, and Arsenal and Chelsea being in European Cup finals in both disciplines of football, the Europa League and the Champions League. But this is a ridiculous argument.
It strikes me, Simon, that Galliani really deep down knows that Italy's had its day. I mean, when he was at AC Milan, they had the likes of Hullet, Rijkaard, Van Basten. That was the Baresi, Maldini, of course.
And that was their halcyon time.
Team. That was the halcyon time.
Yeah.
He basically knows that they're lagging behind the Premier League here in England so far that he's just having a swipe.
But he is having a swipe.
And he's doing it from the lofty heights of Monza.
And they all do it from a position of taking things, like the other guy, Javier Tebas, in Spain, taking a swipe at the English Premier League. really and truly what you should be doing is wondering why your product isn't as saleable,
right,
and making sure that it is. I would suggest to you that the wage structure, I mean, don't forget that the Italians took, Cristiano Ronaldo over to Juve. There's not been a dearth of people going over there and wanting to play in Italian football. But I would suspect that the wage bills in Italy are nowhere near the wage bills in England. So for our yin, there's their yang. They don't pay the same sort of transfer fees. They don't pay the same sort of wages. So whilst they get less revenue, they get more bang for their buck, possibly.
Yeah.
But the standard of Italian football, we had somebody in here who played in it in the mid-'80s who talked about it then, talks about it now, and Graham Souness. So it was a stroll up for him, playing in Italy, for reasons that are easy to understand, because he was playing in the midfield and they dropped off and gave him space.
And they were terrified of him.
But notwithstanding that, they were terrified of him. Notwithstanding of it, the nature of, you should be pulling the bottom up, not the top down.
Yeah.
The Italians should be asking themselves, how do we get to a stage where we can monetize our football far better, rather than say, the damn English, let's pull the top down. We built, our football was in the absolute Kazi at the beginning of the 90s. And out of it, we built a model that everybody around the world, certainly from income generation, not from cost control, but from income generation, is the envy of the world. And what they'd rather do is say, let's exclude the English. I mean, ridiculous argument. What a lightweight mental minnow.
Yeah, yeah.
No wonder he was at Monza.
Adriano, we're not having your argument, I'm afraid. I'm liking what you're saying this morning. Bang for buck, yin for yang. You're on form. It's 11:15.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.